Hi, good evening, all. Welcome back. I just realized it had been 2 months since we've been together, so thank you for joining us today. I have got to tell you that I am so excited to be talking to Becca tonight. If you have not read Dear Henry, Love Edith, you have got to. It is hilarious. It is a wonderful, wonderful romantic comedy that you know what, just tickled my funny bone from beginning to end. Welcome, Becca. How are you?
Good. I just jumped on. I was like, oh, I'm excited. I'm just gonna click on.
Well,
I'm
we are
doing
so
good.
glad to have you here tonight. So, um, so tell us a little bit about your debut novel, Dear Henry, Love Edith. By the way, that's a
This
perfect,
this
perfect
little
title.
thing. Yeah. Well, I'm sure looking at the cover, you're probably thinking mystery,
Right.
suspense, political thriller. Don't be fooled. It is a rom-com. I love the cover. It is small town Illinois, and there's two characters who had a little misunderstanding. Edith is wanting to go to South Africa and do some humanitarian work, and while she's waiting to get over there, she's killing some time here in Illinois, and it's happened where she ends up having to stay with Henry, and she's gotten the impression that he's this little old man, so whatever. And Henry has gotten the impression that this little old lady is staying with him. So the story is really about what happens when they keep missing each other because they're working opposite shifts, and they start exchanging notes, and they don't realize they're bumping into each other around town, and that's the really attractive, good-looking young person, not the old person they think they're writing notes to. So it's a lot of fun. It's a fun story.
Okay, so I have to ask, because all the way through this book, where did you get the idea for this book? I mean, it's
Well,
just the okay.
I have some stranger who knows where he is. Maybe he's still in Springfield, Illinois, to thank for this. He lived in my apartment building for a short while, and so I this apartment building. There's four apartments inside there, and when I moved in, it was kind of word of mouth, like, hey, one's opening up. So a good friend told me when one of the apartments was opening up. And so I knew everybody. She introduced me and we all hung out. It was really fun. It was kind of, we said it's kind of like a sitcom because, you just show up, you go into each other's house, and yeah, we all knew each other well. Then people started moving out and moving on, and I just knew the others less and less until I knew a guy, there might have been two of them, I don't know, but moved in below me, and apparently I wasn't being very neighborly, I guess. I was like, eh. And we just kept missing each other. I was single at the time, and I mean, he was there for months, and I don't know how we'd never ran into each other because we had to use the same laundry, in the basement, mails at the front. You would think surely at some point, there'd be a hey, but there was no hey. But I could hear music and things coming from his apartment, so in my mind, I was like, I know what this guy looks like. Like I had a picture of him in my head just from what I could overhear. And apparently he was making the same assumptions about me. But one day he did come up, my doorbell rang, and I was like, who is at my doorbell? Because you have to like get past the lock. So I'm like, who's this? And I go, well, it's this guy, and he's trying to tell me he lives below me, but I'm like, no, I know in my head what the guy who lives below me looks like, and that is not you. But apparently he claimed it was. And so he was just there to tell me he was moving out, and a moving truck, might be blocking part of the driveway or something. I was like, okay. Well, as he was leaving, though, he turned around and he was like, how come all this time I thought you were this little old lady? I mean, this was like my 20s. I mean, and I'm like, I don't know. But afterward, I'm like, oh boy. So apparently the things he overheard, or maybe because I was quiet, I don't know. Somehow his impression in his head was, yeah, there's this old lady living above me. So I always thought that was funny. And I mean, it was later, I wasn't even writing at that time, but later on, when I wanted to write just a fun, feel good story, I was like, I'm going to play around with that idea a little bit more. And eventually became Dear Henry, Love Edith.
That's awesome. That is so awesome. And it goes to show you, you gotta, of course we can't remember everything, but every once in a while you have that story where, okay, I gotta use this later sort of
Yeah.
thing. So it does, require you to do very little research that way then.
There's a reason I don't write historical because research,
Yeah.
you know,
I have to agree. Every once in a while I talk to an author and they're like, oh, I read 10 books and then wrote one. And I'm like, oh
I know.
boy.
Yeah, yeah. But I did have to, when we got to the South Africa part of my story,
Yeah.
yeah, my editors were like, so what kind of research did you do for that? And I was like, I know there is a South Africa. Like I've seen it on a map. What else do you need? And apparently they wanted more authentic. I don't know. Their editors are kind of picky like that.
Yeah.
Don't tell them I said that.
No,
But yeah,
we
so I
won't we
did
won't
have to
mention
do
their names
some,
out loud.
yeah,
So
no, no, I don't want to point fingers, but so I did have to do some research for that. So
okay, I'll give you
yeah,
that one. So,
yeah,
and you know what? I thank you for giving me the opening. I wanted to mention the group you talked about that Edith wants to go with in South Africa.
right.
That is actually based on a real mission group. I don't know if mission group's the right
It
word.
is.
Okay.
But
So
yeah.
why don't you tell us a little bit about it? And I'm going to let you say the name because I
Oh
murdered
darn.
it.
I know. Well, we'll get to that, but with all the wonderful research I did, finding out there is indeed a South Africa and things happen over there, I was kind of panicking a little bit because I was like, oh, South Africa, boy, it's very diverse. I found that out. Like,
Okay.
really. So I was trying. I'm more of a write the story, do the research later. So I was more like trying to find. I have this kind of idea of the setting and the organization I want, but I do want to make it authentic. So I was trying to find something that would fit with what Edith was trying to volunteer for or go to. And the children's books at the library on South Africa weren't really cutting it. And there was one night I was just going through YouTube videos, putting in rural hospitals in South Africa, and trying to get something. And I eventually stumbled upon this presentation. It was a couple of doctors from South Africa, and I believe it was Boston College that they were talking to. And I mean, it was one of those like, oh, I think I ran to my husband. I was like, I found it. I found it. Because listening to them, they talked for about an hour and their experiences, and then this organization that their hospital was tied into. But I was like, oh, it happened. So they talked about, I'm going to pronounce it Jabulani Rural Health
Okay.
Foundation. Um, so they talked about that place. Well, then I looked it up online and I emailed the operations manager, and part of me, I mean, this is my first book, and so I mean, it's like I'm a writer, but then I'm also like, please take me seriously as a writer. So when I emailed her, I was like, I don't know if she's even going to respond or if she's going to be like, lady, blow it out your ear. We're doing important things here. And I got a response back, and all I could see in the email was, this was the most, and I was just like, oh, like horrible email, unprofessional. Like, what's the rest gonna say? And I opened it and it was like, unexpected, pleasure. And she was so friendly. It gave me tons of information about, I said, my character kind of wants to come and volunteer for an organization like yours. And initially she wanted to be a nurse there. And she's kind of like, no, that wouldn't be realistic, and kind of explained some of the red tape that they would have to jump through. So I'm glad I checked into it because I was able to change that. But then she pointed me, I got it here, to this book. There's a glare, sorry. It's called Hope, a Goat in a Hospital, and her brother wrote it, and he's one of the doctors there that helped found this organization. And so this was like, jackpot reading his experiences, and it was exactly what I needed for my story, for my character. But as a nurse, it was when I was reading this and trying to get the information, is when we were going through our second heavy season of COVID at the hospital. And I was, tired of that. And so it ended up being exactly what I needed as a nurse as well, just because they clearly have gone through their own struggles, but just hearing him, being faithful, even though they didn't have the resources, or being faithful when they're just trying to get people to stay. I was like, I related to it very well of like, we need nurses to stay at the bedside right now. But so it was great timing. I
Good.
find that resource.
I have to admit, when I found out, because after having read the book, I'm like, this, for one thing, you wrote about it so beautifully. You really did. I'm like, this has to be based on a real place. And I was so happy to hear that it was. Now, I didn't go and do a lot of research on it. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But you gave so much good information at the end of the book about it that it was just like, I felt like maybe not been there, but knew where Edith had been, um, which I thought was really kind of cool. So,
Yeah, it was my favorite, I think, surprise of this book, of just discovering that area. And, initially, I mean, it was like I could pick any place that she wanted to go to, but it was like something about South Africa. And I even have friends through our church who are involved with other parts of Africa that I could easily, I've talked to them and said, give me information, but it was just like, no, South Africa. And then I tried to find people like, has anybody been to South Africa? I was asking anybody with an accent, where are you from? Is it South Africa? Like, no. So I'm like, okay.
no, this is an
But
English accent.
yeah, like one was like, I'm from Haiti. I'm like, okay,
Oh,
just checking, but so yeah,
I live
but
in
it
Alabama.
turned out right. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So I do have a couple people that are already asking a couple questions about like your writing journey. I know we talked a little bit before, so please feel free to share as much as you want. But we've mentioned this is your debut. So how long have you been writing? Do you have, I mean, you mentioned a couple novellas, so I'll let you talk about that. So,
Yeah. I would say, as far as like the writing journey, we could say started when my aunt gave me a journal in second grade, and I was like, oh yes. I mean, that was one start. But as far as getting published, like the real beginning of that publishing journey, I would say started around 2016. That was when it really, like, I'm going to write a book. Like, it's on my bucket list. I'm going to do it. And then I completely fell in love with it and was like, oh, I want to keep doing this. So in 2016, I wrote that first story that is a beautiful disaster. I mean, I'd say it's so complex. I don't even understand it. That's how wonderful the story it was. But it's, then we tucked it away. And Dear Henry, Love Edith was actually the second story I've ever written. And I initially thought I wanted to write suspense. And so that's kind of why that first story was a disaster, because my voice is rom-com. Like, it just, I can't help it. It comes out. So you'd have this psycho killer, and then, but there's these cute banter, and it was like, this isn't working. This just isn't working. So I thought, well, I'll just get the cute story out of my system. So I wrote this idea of like, oh, people that think they're elderly and exchange notes. And then I set it aside because I was gonna get back to the nitty gritty suspense. And so I kept trying that, but I mean, it still is like veering back into the rom com lane, each story. But what happened is, after I wrote a couple more books and was learning more, actually reading about the craft of writing, that first one, I was like, oh, I'm sure I can figure it out. No, I had
how hard is it?
to, yeah, learn some things. And so after a couple years, I think it was around 2018, I entered into a contest. It was the ACFW Genesis, and it was my first time just finally putting my writing out in front of somebody that I wasn't related to. I mean, that wouldn't be like, oh, that was nice, or, So it was the first time anonymous judges really gave me feedback. And that year I semi-finaled, which was great because it gave me confidence to like, hey, you're on the right track, but the humility of, boy, there's some things you really need to work on, here. So it spurred me to keep going. And a year, some I'm not good with dates. So somewhere, in that 20th century or, whatever, I entered another contest and that one ended up winning. And then 2019 was really my big year of like, okay, how am I going for this or am I not? And I decided I want to really go for this publishing contract. Um, so I entered Dear Henry Love Edith plus another story into the Genesis again. And the Dear Henry Love Edith one was more just, I want to get as much feedback as I can on my writing. Because at that point, I was still like, I don't know what to do with this story. And it was too short. I knew at that time it wasn't publishable because it was just, it wasn't long enough, but it was, I mean, it was a cute story. So I was like, well, I'll put it in there. Well, of course, that was the one people loved. Like, I mean, they both did well in the contest, but this was the one an editor reached out and wanted to read the whole thing that summer and asked, who's your agent? And I'm just like, my agent? I don't have an agent. And I'm like calling people like, what do I tell her? And they're like, I think you tell her you don't have an agent. So I'm like, oh, okay. And
Okay.
yeah, I think I could do that. So I did send her the story, and I mean, she gave some good feedback. And I met with another editor. It was my first conference that I attended in person, and I'm like, oh. I mean, it was just I was out of my mind. I was leaping over furniture to shake hands with authors, and thankfully nobody called security. I was just so excited to be there and meet people. I met you, the first time, so it was a great experience, and it kind of led up to I ended up Dear Henry Love Edith won at the awards ceremony, and so right after that, my agent, who I ended up signing with, Rochelle Gardner, approached me and was like, "Hey, I want to know more about this story." So the first thing I had to do though was make it longer. I was like, well, like I need to make it longer. So I did. I mean, as soon as I got back, I was like working on it and made it longer. And she ended up offering me representation in early 2020. And then there was that little episode of like a global pandemic that happened. So, things kind of got the pause
Weird.
button got hit. Yeah. I think we were all like, what is going on? And so it was one of those things though that is part of my journey is it was really frustrating at the time because nothing was happening, but looking back I'm grateful because I needed that time to just there's always things you're learning, and then even just like emotionally the getting published, the longer, I just need more time to study myself and be like ready for this. So it wasn't until 2021 that summer that Tyndale offered a contract, and then yeah, here we are with it coming out.
The
So
beautiful yellow cover, which
it's beautiful. Yeah.
it stands out in a crowd, that's for sure. So,
Yeah.
and then somebody listening to your story just now, they have a question because not only are you a working mom, you are a nurse. Are you an ER nurse or are you?
I
I don't.
see you.
Okay, that's what it was. I
Yeah.
knew you had said that. I'm sorry. So they want to know, how do you find time to write? I'm like, never.
Yeah, I shove my kids in the closet and like don't come out. And no, I writing was a creative outlet. It was also kind of a coping mechanism, especially when things got weird in 2020. I wasn't working on Henry and Edith at that time, but I was working on actually the book that's going to be coming out next year. And I mean, that was just kind of my like. I went to work, was like, oh, things are crazy, and then my kids were home at that time. It was like the home learning. My husband's a teacher. So, I mean, in some ways, the kids got them booted up, and there's your get online. And my husband was teaching. I put in the earbuds and just started typing. But yeah, it's been my release. And I don't watch a lot of TV. I'm telling you what, if you cut that out, you have a lot more time. I do like to read, but my TV viewing has really gone down, and I have time. You make time when you want to. I will say this last year, I went part time with my nursing job. I made a deal with my husband. I was like, please, after our second year of COVID, I was like, a little break, just a little break. So that has been glorious. I'll just tell you, that extra day has really freed up extra time to write and do other things too.
And let me say this, I don't know how often you heard it, but thank you. Being an ICU nurse during COVID had to be everybody's worst nightmare. So thank you for your service. I mean, we can't say that enough to you guys. You worked through something that we thought was weird, and you guys had, I mean, you were on the front lines. There's no other way to say it. So, but I am glad you found a way to cope, because I know that was hard too. I have some nursing friends here too, and they were just like, I would go home and go to bed because I couldn't deal with it anymore. So
Right.
I'm glad
It
you
was
did find
exhausting,
something.
I'll say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was, again, the timing. It was like, I mean, everybody was on edge and stressed when it was really at its peak. I mean, it was not fun, but it was like coming home and working on Henry and Edith, like working on the edits and revisions. I mean, I'm grateful that I had that, because it would, like, I can't write the story feeling tired and bitter. So
Yeah.
deep breath, let's go into this world and, yes, be happy again.
So we have a couple other questions, but I got to ask. Okay, Henry and Edith themselves, they're hilarious. Okay. Your background characters are the best. They are the goofiest people I have ever met. So are they based on people you know?
There's my uncle. No, I'm just start calling out my family members. They're watching. I can't. No, all these characters are. No, I think it's, some of my coworkers joke about, like, my patients. I somehow get these really quirky patients, and they're like, these are Becca Kinzer patients, and I don't know. I love those quirky people, and I just, like, take note. I mean, when they're acting weird, quirky, I was like, it's all going in because I'm gonna save all this for later. So I think part of it is just people, yeah, I've met in real life. But I also have to say, I grew up watching a lot of Jerry Lewis movies, and some of those old movies that, I mean, those side characters are hilarious. Like, they each have their own little kind of role in there. And so I loved incorporating that into this story to kind of, yeah, really make the town. I would love to visit it there and hang out with the people.
The cafe restaurant that they would go to, that I'm like, I have got to be in that place.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was a really good small town feel too, but the characters, man, I kept thinking they all need their own book. So so if you're going to do a series, I'd probably be okay with that. So I do have another question. They want to know, what are you reading right now? If you have any recommendations, and then I'm going to tag on to that so we can break this down. So if you forget, don't worry, is what are you looking forward to reading?
Okay, well, I'm not, well, this month I've been working on my edits for my second book. So I have not started off this year reading very much, I can say that. The one book that I've been recommending since last year was Katie Pounder's Where the Blue Sky Begins. So I loved that one. I have brought my little well, there's a lot more in my TBR pile, but I'm showing this is what I'm going to read, because all these books I was very excited about. Melissa Tagg's book here, I got it a few months ago, haven't picked it up yet, but I'm going to read it. I'm going to read that next. This one, I was stalking the mailman all, like, the beginning of last year, like, where are you? My thing got delayed. Have I read it yet? No. So I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me, because I desperately want to read this. And then she has a new one out, and I do want to read it. And then the last one, again, like, Becca, get your act together, is this one. It's been sitting on my pile. I was like, yes, got it right away. I haven't read it yet. So those are three books I'm giving us recommendations, but also for you to hold me accountable of Becca. Read those books. Okay, get them off your TBR pile. I've been inspired by the. Have you seen the thing going around 23 and 23? Like read, yes. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna start with these three and go from there. But otherwise, yeah, I haven't been doing a lot of reading this month yet.
Yeah, well, and that's understandable. I mean, if you're working on edits, it's tough, because you are doing a lot of reading. It's just, it happens to be something you wrote.
Right, I say it's my story over and over. I've read that many times this month. So true. I have been doing a lot of reading.
Now, I usually wait till the end, to ask you, but you have been talking about it. Is this next book that's coming out something you can share about, or is it something that's kind of under wraps yet?
Sure, I'll share. If I get a text right now that says stop sharing, I'll stop. Um, no,
I'll let you know if
no,
something comes up on the chat. Stop her!
yeah,
Stop her!
stop her. Yeah, no, it's another rom-com. Imagine that. I still don't have my suspense out there. Maybe the next one. We'll see. But this one's another small Illinois town. I'm sticking with what I know, and because I don't want to do the research again, we've talked about that. And this one is a young woman who's trying to save the music program because she's almost out of a job and they don't have any funds, and so they end up some imagine this crazy events, a few misunderstandings happen, but she ends up getting into a contest with her ex-fiance's brother to ride a tandem bicycle down the Natchez Trace and win a whole bunch of money. And why did I pick the Natchez Trace? Because my husband and I, before we got married, we did that. We rode it on a tandem bicycle. So again, there's a little less research because I've done it. Yeah.
You're brilliant.
I know. Yes. Follow me for more tips of how to get out of research for your next novel. But I did, okay, I did some research because, don't come after me if you didn't get the city right. I think I did. I think I did going on it. But so it's just another, yeah, fun, adventurous rom com. This one we're targeting, I think, more towards like spring, early summer ish of next year. It'll
Okay.
feel more lighthearted, yeah, springtime summer read.
Perfect. So, and maybe you're not, and no is a definite answer here is, are you at liberty to share a title, or do we not have a title yet?
We don't have an official
Okay.
title yet. I'm trying to work tandem into the title. I can tell you that. So if anybody has any like cute suggestions with tandem and rom
There you
com,
go.
send
So,
them. Yeah, we're open.
and if you want to hint at a mystery at that second, you can
Right.
too. And it's like, haha, no, it's not.
Yeah. Mhm. Yes. But
We will
yeah,
all
we'll have
wait
to.
with bated breath for your super scary mystery in a couple years.
Yeah. Just you wait. Yeah. Things
We'll,
will
we'll keep
really take a
waiting.
turn, but it'll be cute. Yeah. It'll
Right.
be a cute murder
Good
mystery with
banter.
the
Like,
psycho. Yeah.
just before he kills him, he has a really good
Yeah.
conversation with him. That'll be your catch line for him.
Yeah. There we go.
Hey, we've practically written the book now, so you're all
Right.
set.
Yeah. I'm good to go. No research. We've already written it. Great.
Yeah. Yeah. I will warn you, I've heard that if you have to write suspense, you probably have to do a little research.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll keep. We'll keep
Call
thinking this
Lynette
through
Easton or
then.
something. I'm sure she'll help you out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. We went off on a tangent. So, you have helped me. One of the questions I usually ask is, what different genre would you like to write on? You've nailed that one good and proper. So
I'm
good
ready.
job.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so I wondered all the way through this is, do you have a favorite rom-com movie? And if so, which one?
While You Were Sleeping, hands down, all
Really?
time favorite. Yes. And that was partly, I loved the misunderstanding in that one. And so it kind of You can see elements of that one in Dear Henry Love Edith. And plus the side characters, again, like the parents and the grandma and was it Saul? I mean, they're all Joe Jr., hello, so they
Now
make
I'm
the
gonna have to
movie.
watch it again. It's been a little while since I've seen that
So,
one.
yeah,
So,
you should. It's worth it.
okay. I'll let you have that one. It's not, I mean, I've enjoyed it. I love good rom-com movies. But yeah, that one. You know what? I need to watch it again. It's been a little while.
Yeah. My
So
other
while we
one
were,
is Return to Me. That's one of my other favorites. Have you seen that one? No.
yeah. So do you having, you started your career not long ago. Okay. It's not long. So what words of advice would you give somebody who is trying to do what you did 7 years ago when you
Right.
decided in 2016 to start writing?
Well, start. I'd say, I think so many people have that desire. I mean, just with me and my book, I can't tell you how many people are like, oh, I always wanted to write a book someday. So, first thing, start. And then don't give up. One quote I came across or a piece of advice was the only difference between an unpublished writer and the published writer is the published writer didn't give up. And so you just have to keep going, and because there'll be so many doubts and there'll be so many times it feels like nothing's happening, or I mean there was times I truly was like, am I really going to get a book published, in that early stage, or like, is my book actually going to be in a bookstore? I don't know. And I didn't even want to tell people about it because I'm not even going to tell people I'm writing, and then you feel crazy because you go home and you're at your job trying to save lives, and then you come home and you're like writing about these pretend people and you're like, I'm losing my mind. So you're not. If you're, yeah, that's my advice. It's fine, and just find other writers, because that was another huge thing when I went to the conference. You realize, oh, there's all these people just like me that love having pretend conversations in their heads too. So I mean, yes, go to a conference and just keep going and be so patient. Yes, be patient. That was one thing. I followed Jody Headland's blog. She used to write a lot about writing, especially her early journey. And that was one bit of advice that I kept coming across was don't rush into publication. Like, take your time, be patient. And I'm glad that I listened to that, because it is tempting. Like I said, with that first story, I was like, well, this is great. And it wasn't. It wasn't great. So, yeah, just be patient, learn, find other writers, and keep going. Don't give up.
That is very, very good advice. That be patient thing.
Mhm.
I've heard that. Well, I have it written. Why isn't it published? So
Right.
that's very good. So thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that part. That's very
Yeah. Well, and
interesting.
it made me think of something else too, is when you
Uh-huh.
finish that first book, move on to the next one. Because that's the other bit. Some writers, I think, get so stuck on getting that first story published, and then it's frustrating, but it's like that may not be your best one. Like, set when you finish it, I know you love it and you think it's fabulous and the world needs to read it, but move on to the next one. And then, you know what, when you finish that, move on to the next one. Because that is one thing I'm glad I did do is, I mean, by the time I even tried getting Dear Henry Love Edith, we were sending it out, I'd written at least 5 stories, and that was my second one. So I kept writing more and more. And so that, yeah, that's my other advice. Move on to the next one. You can always come back and tweak it and play with it more, but always have some different, what is it, irons in the fire. Is that, yes, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I've heard that too. Well, I got one written and now they want another one and I don't even know where to start.
Right.
So that is really good. And I am a firm believer that you can try to tweak a story too much.
Yeah.
You know, you have, whether it's being published, I mean, eventually, and you experience this, I have to let it go. I have a deadline. It needs to be
Mm-hmm.
done. So
Right.
yeah, no, that's very good. That's very good stuff. Um, I have a feeling there's a story behind this. One of the questions I got is, how much input did your brothers give to your rough drafts?
Can't, boy, who wrote that?
Um, are they near
Well,
you?
they're in California.
Okay.
So yeah, they can ask apparently whatever they want and I can't come after them.
Wait till
My
Christmas.
yeah. Actually, I don't think they really gave much at all, but they did read it. And I
Okay.
think they're still shell shocked from what is this? So, yeah, they're still recovering from that experience of reading the first book, I'm sure. And the fact that they read it, though, when I realized how convoluted the story was, later, I'm that has endeared me. That's a true brother's love that they would read this whole manuscript and say, "What?" Yeah,
And they still speak to you, so it must have been all
they
right.
do. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So how many brothers do you have?
I have two older brothers. Yes,
And then any sisters, or is it just you against them?
just me against them. But yeah, they're pretty good older brothers.
That's
Not too
good.
bad.
I'm glad to
Yeah.
hear. I knew there had to be a story there somewhere. So, and somebody wanted to know, this is actually a really fun question. Do you have any writing quirks, like the need to listen to music, or you only eat certain snacks, or you only write in pink font or something?
Well, I did listen to music early on. I haven't lately. I did listen to just like happy big band show tunes to kind of get in the happy mood for writing, but I haven't, like when I've worked through the edits, I haven't. I don't know that I have any like quirks. I drink tons of coffee. It's just kind of like constant. And yeah, I don't have a writing space, and so I do move around. Um, One of my dreams goals is to actually have a writing desk, maybe in a room with locks so the kids can't come in. My daughter is like always sneaking in over my shoulder reading what I've written. I'm like, go away. But she was the one who did recommend the story idea for the one that's coming out next year, because I had a couple different stories and I was like, I don't know which one I should try for. And she was like, oh, the one where they're doing the bike. It's hilarious. I'm like, how do you know? I've been reading it. I'm like, okay.
Wait, what?
So, yeah, like, okay, yeah. Um, but yeah, so that, I don't know if that's a quirk. I move around a lot. I don't have a writing space, but
I will
coffee.
admit the coffee thing isn't really a quirk. I believe that
I
is a
know. I got to come up with
requirement.
something. Yeah. I have my lucky pants. I don't know. I'll start wearing some lucky pants soon.
I only wear my polka dotted
Right.
pants.
Yeah.
That's a different one. I'd give you that one.
Well, I'll start that one. So next time
Okay.
I'll have a quirk. Yeah.
Okay. We'll be ready next time to ask you that question. And then I'll forget. You'll be like,
Yeah. Are you going to bring up my pants? Yeah.
so for you, what is the hardest part about writing besides research? And what is the easiest thing about writing?
Hmm. The hardest part varies, I think. But for me in general, the hardest part is the ending, especially with rom-coms, or the point, where they always have a breakup. Like there always has to be, and I think that's my least favorite part when I read a romance or a rom-com, because most of the time it's like, oh, come on, you two, like you're gonna get together. Like why are we doing this? And then I always, as a reader, get impatient when they each have to have like their, epiphany, and it's like, ah. So as a writer, that part's hard for me to write because now I'm like, oh, how am I going to break these characters up and make this meaningful? So I struggle a bit with that. But the easiest part, I think, is just coming up with that seed of an idea of like when I see like the idea for Dear Henry Levita, like, oh, this is amusing. So that part's easy. But then actually turning it into a story is like, that part's a little tough. But yeah, those are the two hardest parts for me.
Yeah, interesting. I was thinking the breakup would have been the easy part. You get to, well, and oh, I shouldn't say that because I'm not sure who has read it. I was going to give away a plot line. Don't do that.
Yeah.
But
They'll cut you off.
I mean, I'm going to get the words on the bottom. Stop, stop.
Yeah. I almost did that in my first podcast. I almost gave away this big spoiler. I was like, oh, and this one, and then like caught myself right at the moment. I was like, oh, sorry, next question.
Yeah.
I can't answer that.
I've often said I should do these things about 2 months after the book comes out because then I could just talk about all the. I'm sorry, it's been 2 months. You should have read it.
Right. You had your chance. Go.
You were warned. You knew this was advertised. So is there an author, living or dead, that has inspired you to do what you're doing?
I would pick Jodi Headland. Like, I followed her journey, and the way she got her first agent and publishing contract was through the Genesis contest. And that was how I heard about ACFW initially, when I was like trying to figure out like, how do you do this? And so and that was kind of my plan, because I thought, I mean, how do you get the attention of an agent? Like, really, when you have nothing published? I mean, yes, even if you have a great story idea, I've read how they get bombarded with so many emails, things end up in the slush pile. And so I had that idea at the beginning of like, hey, it worked for her. If I could write something, do well in a contest, that at least gives me something. And then I also just admire her because my goodness, can that woman write? She puts out so many books a year, and it's just very inspiring. And I feel like she's, a lot better at research than I am. So, but I really admire her, and plus, I just love her books. I have not come across I've read all of her books, and there's not been a single one where I thought, you could have done better. They're all like, oh, Jodi, you did it again.
I agree. Her time travel one that she did. Yeah. I was fascinated by it. And I'm not a big time traveler reader. I get frustrated because it's like, but you fell in love with here, but your family is here. So it's a very weird argument I have with characters at that point. So,
well, I always, with time travel, sometimes I get tired. Like, you don't have to explain to me how this works. Like, I'm not going to understand any of this anyway. Just go through the secret door, and get back there. So I did like, though, how she handled it, and it was interesting without getting like, oh boy, this is really scientific. So yeah, I think it was a good time travel series.
Yeah, she's a neat lady. So, okay, so there is a Carol S. And her comment is, knowing you as I do, I'm surprised it is a romance and not a black comedy / murder mystery. So proud of you, ordered my copy today. So I don't know who Carol S. is, but she thinks you should write murder mysteries too.
She might know me from the hospital. Carol, that's,
Maybe we will go down that rabbit trail. So, what is one thing you wish your readers knew about you, but nobody has ever asked about?
Well, I mean, my answer before would have been about writing. Like, I wish people knew that I wanted to be a writer, but I think the cat's out of the bag now. And I mean, of course, I always want people to ask about my dog, but I volunteer that information all the time anyway. So, boy, I don't know. I don't know if I have anything that I don't talk about already that I wish people would ask. I love talking about classic movies, so if people want to talk more or ask more about that, I'm always game.
That's interesting. So, like classics in like black and white only, or does it have to be a certain year old?
I'm not that particular. Any of them. So, yeah. I love Jimmy Stewart. So, I mean, he's in some black and whites, he's in some color. And then, of course, I mean, if you read the book, I clearly have a thing for Paul Newman. So, any of his movies, any of those, I'm all for. I actually showed my kids Rear Window the other night. They were like, "What, Mom? What is this? I thought you said it was scary." And then, but the last 10 minutes got them. They were like, "Oh,
Good.
this is scary." So I was like, "See, I told you. You just had to wait an hour and 50 minutes."
There's a lot of buildup to it.
Yeah.
So I have to admit, there's been times where I've watched one of these older movies that at the time when I first saw it, I was like, this is the scariest thing I've ever seen. And then I watch it again and I'm like, well, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, that's what I hadn't seen this movie since I was like maybe junior high age, and I just remember like, oh, just and but watching it now, I was like, okay, it's a
Yeah.
little slower than I thought, but we're gonna stick with it. Okay.
Still one of my favorites, kids, and you're going to love it.
Yes, I will raise you to love classic movies.
Oh, Mom.
Yeah.
So I have to ask now on this one, obviously Edith had the nursing degree there. Does nursing influence what you write about? I know you have talked about how it was, kind of your release during COVID, but you had a few years you were writing before that. So is it something I think I'm wanting, is it something you want to bring in every time, or is it just kind of a quirk that happened this time?
So my first stories I wrote did always have a nurse in there, and I did kind of wonder like, okay, maybe that could be my thing of each story has a nurse. Um, but this next one doesn't, the one coming out
Oh,
next year. So yeah, so much with that. But I think I do incorporate looking at it at least one hospital scene, or I mean there's healthcare gets in there somehow, because you know why? I don't have to research it. I know the hospital. Those things are easy to write. Like I know exactly what the nurse is going to say, and she's going to say it with attitude. And yeah,
and she's going to tell you to get out of bed because that's what I told you
yeah,
to do.
you're fine. Yeah, get up to the chair. But I
Okay,
will
I'll remember
say,
that.
yeah, I one story that I've also set aside. It was like really about a nurse, like the main focus, and I did enter that one into a contest, and the judges hated that one. They hated this nurse, and it was a little like ooh, because I feel like there was a lot of me in this nurse, and I may have maybe put too much of myself in this character. And yeah, that one I was like, okay, we got to tone down a little bit on the nurse's attitude in here. People want a nice, compassionate
Yep.
nurse.
And they
And
love
just,
us as patients. They think we're great.
yes, right. I was like, okay, I thought maybe, yeah, shouldn't I'll just stay away from that, writing that. Because
Yeah, we don't want to know what you guys actually talk about when you're at your
exactly.
okay? It's better for us to think that you like us all and then we go home and we feel good about ourselves. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that one lady that was in here, I mean, good heavens.
All right. We love them all. We love them all.
I had a question. Now I'm blanking on it, but we'll find something to talk about, I'm sure.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you know what? And this is usually something I end with. We got a little bit of time yet. So when I find my questions back here, do you have like a website? Are you on Facebook? Where can we find you other than, that your books are on bakerbookhouse.com?
Yes, we'll start there. And then I do have a website, beccakinzer.com. And as far as social media, my favorite place as far as books and writing is Instagram. I love looking at the pictures of all the other books people are reading. I'll occasionally pop onto Twitter, and I'll usually go, this is weird, and then pop out of Twitter, but I am occasionally there. And as far as Facebook goes, you can try sending me a friend request. If I don't know you from Adam, I probably won't accept it. But if we have at least one connection, I might be like, sure, let's be friends. So, yeah, the website is where you can sign up for my newsletter. And that is where, if you sign up, you will get 2 novellas that I wrote a few years ago and can give you a little taste of my writing. And there's this much suspense that I put into the stories. Yeah. Worked it in.
That's good. You work that in. That's what we need. So
Yep.
that way, when we write a review on your novella, oh, you should write more mysteries. You're off and running.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
And I was going to ask this earlier, and then I got distracted. And that's what I was trying to think of is in your background characters, which one was your favorite?
In Dear Henry Love Edith,
Yeah.
I think it was Peg. Her little, she worked with Henry in his office, and I want a Peg. I want a Peg who works with me and hangs out with me all the time.
Yep.
Yeah, like
Doesn't let you get away with anything.
Right. Loves you to death, but will tell you when you're an idiot. I like those characters.
Okay, I'll give you Peg. I did like her. I was trying to think of the cafe owner's name.
Julie.
Julie. She was, I loved
Julie's
her.
good. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're all, Lance. I liked Lance too. They're all good.
They were, really, truly, they were, because they were just half the fun too, because of all the anticipation they had.
Right.
Again, I'm not going to give anything away, but the way they were reacting to the story they could see developing was funny.
Yeah.
Because you felt like they were almost part, because you knew, the reader knows, and now we had characters that knew too, and that was what was cute.
That does make me think, James, he's the police officer. He might be the only one who has a level head in that town, and I actually feel a little bad for him. Like, poor James.
Yeah. Didn't you get it?
Yeah. Poor guy. Yeah.
What were you doing?
Take care of this, James. Fix it.
Yeah. Oh, this has been so much fun. So, one thing, and I'm going to do a blatant advertisement here. There's a place you're going to be in May, where you're going to join me at Fiction Readers Summit. And we are so excited to have you. So if anybody is looking forward to meeting Becca sometime, come join us in Grand Rapids. You can get information at fictionreadersummit.com. But there's all kinds of things going on. So I have to admit, I am so excited that you're coming. And it turns out to meet you again. You had reminded me that we had met before, and I felt so bad I couldn't remember. So I know. I kind of remembered. I knew your name before so
that
like,
no-name writer sitting next to you at one meal.
You remember me. I felt bad. Let me clue you. I felt
like I said, you were the only person I met who worked at a bookstore. And I was like, what do you write? And you said, I don't. So you were more memorable.
I know, but you people need to write more, so I have a job.
Yeah.
That sounds like something I'd say.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so, and is there any other book tour going on? Or are you sticking to podcasts? I mean, working mom, that's going to be hard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm winging it, okay? I'm just, if someone tells me to show up somewhere, I'm like, okay, sure. So, I mean, like my coworkers were doing really fancy book signings in the break room. We got that coming up. Like, all right, I'll be there.
That is awesome.
I'm actually really excited about it. Oh, I know. They're wonderful. So, yeah, I don't know. I think all my big podcast things, I'm done. So we'll see what pops up. I have something exciting to look forward to in May.
Yes, you're gonna have so much fun, even if I have to say so myself. So
Yeah.
As soon as one gets done, we start working on the next one going, okay, is it time yet? So they're a crazy bunch of readers, but they're great. They are fantastic and they're gonna love you. So, but I have had loads of fun. It's been good to get to know you and to hear a little more about Henry and Edith and where they came from. So, and we are eagerly waiting for your next one in 2024. So it's a whole year, but okay.
Yeah.
We want writers to have a new book every month. Okay, so work on that, would you? You might have to do a little research.
Yeah, let's pace ourselves. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, one a month would be too much. That I would have to say is just ridiculous. But
Jody might be able to pull it off, but
yeah, I don't know how she does it. She's amazing. So, and there's always those ones that everybody else looks at and goes, and it's got to be a talent of some sort. So, but So we will see you in May, but thank you very, very much for joining us tonight. Thank you for the good laughs. I always enjoy that part too. So,
Well, this is
thank you for
fun.
that.
Yeah,
Good.
thanks for having me. I enjoyed
You're
it.
very welcome. And thank you everybody for joining us. We have more events coming up soon. So make sure you check out bakerbookhouse.com/events and to get the list. And whether they're virtual or in store, we'd love to have you join us. So everybody have a good night and we'll see y'all soon.